You're listening to the Enough to Keep Going weekly video games podcast. This is episode number 305 for the week that was in gaming for August 21st through the 27th, 2023. Now, without much further ado, let's get to it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast, episode number 305, August 27th, 2023. I'm your host, TomMaster99. With me, a full complement, Mr. DBQ Hams. DB, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad to be back. Just like the first game we're going to talk about, there were some waits and queues, and I was not accessible to be here last week. But fortunately, just like the first game we're going to talk about, now you can. Now we are able to join you. So
good. Yeah, we'll talk about that one in a few minutes.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
Yes, we will. And also we have, of course, behind the scenes, or at least tech-wise, Mr. Game Logic. Game, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. It's been a good geek week. Good comic books. Good. Been binging Game of Thrones and
nice.
Good gaming. Yeah.
Nice. Have you watched it before or no? Game of Thrones.
It's one of the many series that I've started like multiple times before, but just never stuck with. But I did a recent training exercise, and I told myself if I could stick with every season, I picked a non-nerd show in Sons of Anarchy. And I told myself if I was able to stick with that all the way through to the end, then I could, commit myself to some of these geek shows that I keep falling off of. So I did get through all 7 seasons of Sons of Anarchy, and now I'm ready to swing back to the nerd stuff in full force and hopefully stick through everything, including Game of Thrones, Arrow, and The Walking Dead, which are 3 series that I've constantly started multiple times and fell off of.
Yeah, I hear you. There's too much to watch out there right now. Plus all the old stuff, which is even worse because, all the old stuff is like, 24 episodes at least a season. But anyway, enough of TV and movie talk. Let's jump into our main GX stories here. Talk about our games, newer-ish, or at least new to us maybe, that we've been playing lately. DB, you hinted about it. Wayfinder. I was playing on the PC. You were playing on the PS5. I picked it up Saturday night. So the queues weren't too bad. Like it said like a exorbitant amount of time, but I got in within like 30 seconds or so. So what was
you picked it up this Saturday night, right?
Yeah, this Saturday.
Okay, so if you picked it up last Saturday when it launched on a Thursday or Friday. So this is Wayfinder. Wayfinder is it's being published by Digital Eclipse of Warframe, and it is Airship Syndicate of the Darksiders lineage. It launched, it was originally supposed to come to early access in May, and they pushed it back until August 12th. And then 2 days before August 12th, they announced on their Discord that they were pushing it back another week in order to get some things ready. And when it launched, they were overloaded on their servers, which I guess is a good sign for the number of people that were trying to get in. Well, it was a good sign that there were a number of people interested. Hopefully those people are still interested after it took about a week for them to do some server balancing, to squash a number of things. There were, following on their Discord. I was following on their Discord throughout. I tried the first weekend, and it was the queues were 16,000 to 18,000. Once it dropped down to like 11,000 and then would bounce back up. There were problems where you would get down even to, in the single digits, and then it would lock up. So by week 2, by the week that we both have played, the servers are stable. You can get in relatively quickly. The queues are not long at all. I did not have a lot of wait when I played. So I don't know what the queues are. I mean, the queues are the same because it's a shared server between PC and PlayStation. So, but yes, it feels like Darksiders 2 with with a World of Warcraft kind of feel to it, right? It is a shared open world with instance dungeons that you can queue up and work together or go solo. Working together feels kind of like a strike, like in terms of going through the dungeon.
Yeah.
You have 3 main characters that are initially there. If depending on what you've upgraded to and what tier you've entered in on as an early backer, you can get access to the other. There's 5 playable characters classes total. And those can be paid for or earned throughout the game. It feels you have a heavy and a light attack like you would in Darksiders, along with skills on a cooldown that, depending on your class, do a variety of things. I was excited about this game. I'm still excited about this game. I was in some of the closed betas and had played it back in the spring, so was very much looking forward to it, and was, as many interested people were disappointed when it kind of launched in the state that it did, but seeing that it's relatively stable a week out is a good sign. I've played both the warrior class with a sword and shield, and kind of the I guess you call it a rogue, right, with 2 blades, dual wielding. Kyle, what are you playing?
I tried all 3, which I'll get to. I'll get to that part in a second of just trying out each person. But I tried I guess the ranged guy. He had the guns. He's the shooter guy. So I tried, like I said, I tried all 3. But I was playing with my friend. My friend was playing. He had said he had tried them all because I think he had paid for like the whole thing. So he's got all the characters, I think, already. But he was playing the warrior. The warrior guy mostly. I think he switched to the rogue at one point, but excuse me, mostly it was the warrior character. But the trying out each character, and I don't know, I'm assuming it's the same on PS5. I don't know if you did. I don't know if you tried out each character or not.
So you start as, it's kind of a small little tutorial world within the narrative, as you're kind of stuck in the veil and trying to get out. You've been narrative wise, the evil element attacked, and you were kind of locked away for the past year. And as you break out is kind of your tutorial. So you have an option within that tutorial to then choose a different class before you commit to it. So, yep. So yeah, I knowing what I knew from the closed beta, I knew what class I enjoyed and kind of stuck with that.
Oh, you just picked that one? Okay.
Yep.
So since this was the first time I was playing, I was like, all right, I'm going to try each character before I jump in there. And my friend had told me, he gave me hints on, what each character was. I was like, I'll try it out. But then you have to do that tutorial, at least for me, or on the PC, you have to do that tutorial each time. Like you want, and it's not super long. It's like 5 minutes or so.
No, right? Like, yes, it does. If you choose a different one.
Yeah, they could have jumped you to the end or maybe like midway through that part, because it just seemed kind of a pain to kind of go through the whole thing.
There's a lot of running and jumping.
Yeah, and granted, like I said, it's not, it's not super long, but still, I was just like, come on. You could have streamlined that a little bit more. But I eventually chose the shooter guy. Just, I figured range is usually my thing on most games. So there's no like wizard. Well, maybe one of their other characters is like a wizard or something, but I haven't seen the other 2 yet. So, but I tried each one, and the rogue she was actually pretty cool. She had those kind of teleport moves, and
Mhm.
it seemed pretty strong. But obviously once you start, you got to kind of build. They kind of give you all the powers when you're doing that training section, and then when you start, you kind of just strip down to nothing. So, or just like one power, and then I think you're like your super special or ultra or whatever they call it in this game. So, but it was fun though. I mean, I enjoyed it. I tried World of Warcraft in the past, and I wasn't really interested in it. But this has been a little bit more, actiony, so it's not as clunky to me at least. So, but then the other thing that was, I don't know if did you try playing with anybody at all?
No, I've only played solo. So
Okay, so that was a little bit.
How was it playing with another?
That was a little bit of a pain just trying to party up together. Like we're trying to, I don't know if it was just controls or maybe they're still having some issues in the background, but we would add each other and we would see each other. But then when I started, he had actually, he'd been, I think he's like level 17 or something now. So he was playing in the game already. Excuse me. And I was just going through tutorial, doing whatever. And finally, when I was able to party up with people, all right. So I added him. Like we don't see each other. Like, all right. So I don't know like what we're supposed to do. We're clicking on everything. I click on him and it just says, leave party or kick or, just kind of basic options. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And they don't really tell you anything, but what you got to do is you have to go to, it's like the teleport runestone thing that you can teleport to different areas to. You have to go into that menu, and then there's a thing on the bottom there that tells you to, I forgot what the exact wording is. Basically, you bring all the parties to one server is basically what it's doing. So then when you do that, and then it loads in, and then you have everybody in one world. But even then, like we weren't like right next to each other. Like he was out like way off somewhere. So and that was all right. We were still I was just in the beginning town, so it wasn't too far away. But it was kind of weird. And then the other thing is though, and then each time we would go, like say I had to go to like the next area to do my mission because I was a party leader. We'd load into that next zone, but he was still back in the original zone. So then I had to go to that runestone again and hit, gather party or something, whatever it says. And, it has to load. First it does like a matchmaching thing. And then I was like, all right, find the server and then, load again. So I don't know why it just doesn't pull us both in at the same time, which is kind of weird, but that
feels like a clunky kind of early. I mean, it feels like early access.
Yeah.
That way, right? Like in a traditional MMO, you have a certain number of servers. So if you're loading into the same server, it's much easier to party up and join people. And at this point, there's not that kind of delineation in terms of what servers you're choosing.
Yeah. So, it was kind of annoying, but I mean, but then there was something like later on, and it might've been when we were doing one of the strikes, and I think you can teleport there too, to the different areas in that same map. And it asks you, like, hey, do you want to bring your partner with you? I'm like, well, yeah. But why doesn't it do that in just like the regular world? So that was kind of weird. I think that's what it asked me. But I know there was one section when I teleported, and it actually asked me, if I wanted to bring him along. So I just thought that was kind of weird. Like only in certain situations it gives you that option. So
how did that scale when you went into a dungeon, which is instance, versus the open world, which is kind of shared? Did it scale enemies differently for you and him since you were at different levels?
No, since I was the party leader, he was still at his level. I think, like I said, 17. So like when he was hitting people, he was like just taking them out pretty much, one or two strikes. So yeah, because initially I joined his server because we were still trying to figure out how to even do it. But then he's like, once we figured it out, he's like, all right, I'll become the party leader because obviously he was too high for me to tag along with him because I would have just been wrecked. So, but yeah. But I mean, just gameplay wise, like I said, it's pretty fun. I mean, you got your regular, for me, I have the shooting, and I can aim down. I think with the rogue, I think you can actually I don't know if, you play with controller, so you can click in and you can actually, it'll snap to an enemy, but a shooter, and actually I can just do the aim down sight kind of a thing. So, which is kind of cool.
But it's a third person, just for those listening.
So it just kind of zooms in a little bit. Like I don't go totally into ADS, but I zoom in a little bit, so it's still kind of nice. You got your dodges and stuff like that. And like I said, you got your ultra abilities, and I just unlocked one other ability when I was playing, so I'm starting to get there. But I think he maxed out a couple of characters actually already. So, and I think that was maybe within a week because he had mentioned it to me about it last weekend. and I just didn't get a chance to look at it. And then he was talking about it again this past weekend or yesterday, and so we finally did it. But so it doesn't seem like it'll take all too long to go through the game itself, maybe. So I don't know. I'll see. We'll see how that goes as we play a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
I'm curious what maxed out looks like. I know there's an end game, and I would think that there's a number of the way the world's set up. There's definitely the kind of plot devices are around these portals, right?
Yeah.
So it's very possible for them to continue adding in different zones with new portals to kind of protect and reacquire things like that. So yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy the combat. It is very much kind of, at least playing with the tank guy, it's very Darksiders feel to it. The tank has some nice offensive, but also some kind of abilities that are designed for co-op, where I can mark somebody and they'll take extra damage if I'm marking them, or I can put down like a healing zone in addition to kind of a big sword slash or a shield of light to kind of protect a group of people as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like you were mentioning before about the strikes. It's kind of nice, even if you're not, like, if I wasn't playing with him, there's still other people in the world that if I'm in that same area and they're in the same area, we can just do it together, which is kind of cool. Even if you go into the dungeon, so it's kind of nice. They'll still have help.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, no, I enjoy it. I'm glad that
Destiny-ish.
it's starting to seem kind of stably. I'd be curious to see kind of what this looks like in terms of, I hope for, Airship Collector Syndicate, that it lives long enough to get out of early access, right? Like this type of free to play game is always a difficult economic pool, right? In terms of finding that balance of, do they get enough together to be able to hold off to launch it, or is it something that kind of never quite catches an audience? But it plays well. It has a lot of potential. I like the characterizations. I think people that enjoyed the Darksiders Genesis, that there's a lot there to enjoy. The variety in characters gives some options for people. I think, did you just join at the $20 spot with the base one?
Yeah, I just did the $20. Yeah.
Yep, that's what I did as well.
Yeah, the art style it does kind of remind me of a little bit of Overwatch. Like even the characters, like the big guy, kind of looks like Reinhardt, and
Yeah, it's got that kind of accentuated cartooniness to them, and the color palette is very pastel-y. So it kind of feels in that same vein, which is, that's where it kind of treads a little bit in World of Warcraft as well.
Yeah, it's graphically, it's actually really pretty. So it's really nice with the different colors, and even just like the 3D environments and stuff. So it's not.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy playing it on the PlayStation 5, sitting back on a couch. Some of the text is still pretty small in the menus, where I could see sitting on a computer screen, it's a little easier to navigate some of that, because there's a number of layers to it, as you would expect with a free-to-play game, in terms of different leveling up and crafting and feeding your weapons to level them up types of things. So
my friend who, he's usually like keyboard mouse. He's like, you got to play this with the controller. It's a lot easier. So I was like, all right. So I tried it. And it was a lot easier playing with the controller, even on the PC. So obviously you don't have that option, I don't think. But this is just PC and PS5, right?
As of now, yes.
Okay. All right. Game Logic, any questions on Wayfinder or comments? Since we've been
so just a like there. in a tuna can. What is this? Is this multiplayer Warcraft with like slightly different art? Is that the?
It is. Warcraft is in like original Warcraft of an RTS aspect, or it is an actiony. It's an actiony MMO. In some ways, but it's not. There are you have a lot of quest givers, there are some hubs, so it does have that MMO type of feel, but the combat is button kind of third person actiony in terms of any type of cooldown types of things.
So is it like, would you liken it to like For Honor or forget what was the other like big multiplayer game that was big with streamers that was like a medieval like warfare melee kind of action thing. Is that is that the stripe it should be painted with?
I mean, isn't For Honor more of a individualized combat, or there's a little more timing to it? No, this is very much this is
I'd say like DC Universe Online.
Kind of. I mean, it feels playing the character
as far as
I
gameplay.
feel like, it feels kind of original God of War like in terms of the original trilogy, in terms of that combat, the melee aspects of it. Yeah, I think the strongest comparison in terms of the gameplay really for me is it's Darksiders 1 and 2 without the puzzle elements. With Darksiders 2 really had a lot of loot and equipment to kind of level up and progress through. And so it does some of that same way. So in terms of a comparable game, it is kind of a third person character action with the ability to play multiplayer.
Okay. And it's a heavy multiplayer lean. It is being set up as a game as a service. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Very much so. They haven't like announced what their season model will be or anything like that. But yes, it is, there's a store that's got, cosmetics in it. So it very much is prepared to be a season pass type of game. Because once it launches, it's supposed to be free to play.
Has this thing shown up anywhere, like in anyone's showcase, or?
It was in a PlayStation showcase back last fall, I believe. That it was kind of that's the place where I remember it being announced, was Wayfair there, and then it could be, you could sign up for a beta at that point. So, but it hasn't really shown up in any other showcase since that time.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, up next, we have a game that I actually went back to. I had been playing it for a little while, and the next two actually games that I have that I'll talk about as we go through our GX stories. I think I mentioned this last week, like I was trying to find like a kind of open world game to whet my appetite for, the coming weeks in Starfield. I played Dragon's Dogma, which I'll talk about later, and then I was like, I don't know, I had bought one game, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes, but there's another game, Cyberpunk 2077, that I had played, a while ago, and I just I dropped off it, not for the reasons when it first came out. I had a lot of stuff like usual, and I get distracted about of things. So I went back to it this past week. Played it on my Xbox One X, my original Xbox One X.
Wait. The game that barely ran on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, for somebody that has a beefy PC and a Series X, so why install it on your VCR box?
Laziness. I want to just sit there in front of my TV and play something. I didn't feel like going down to where my PC setup is. I think I played it. I was like midweek last week, and then I played it more these past couple of days. But I was just like, oh man, I don't really feel like going downstairs, turn all my stuff on, and it's not Game Pass, so I don't have it on my PC. I wouldn't be able to use it on that, so I would have had to put it on one of my consoles. And I do have a Series X, but I actually played it back on my Xbox One S when I had it, and it wasn't, as far as graphics, like it didn't look the best, but I never had any issues like I always read about and stuff like that. And this was like right when it came out. So I was like, I'll play it on my One X. It should run fine. And it does. Like, obviously, the load times are a little bit long, and especially at the beginning. But in between, like in the games and stuff, it's not too bad. But so I was just playing on, I'm playing on a big 55-inch screen, which is kind of nice with, the kind of aesthetic that the city is, just neon everywhere and there's huge buildings and everything. So it looked really nice. It looks really pretty. But I actually really got into it. Like I've been playing it pretty much, like I said, since midweek, and just going through, just kind of get acclimated again with the controls. Obviously, not too far off. It's a shooter, mainly in the gameplay. So you got your trigger and both triggers that you use for shooting and ADS and stuff like that. But some of the other things, just obviously like healing and stuff like that. It's just kind of trying to wrap my mind around. Like the implants that you can put in and upgrading your weapons and doing this other stuff. I had to kind of get back and get used to, because it's kind of involved. was not like super simple like on some other games. So I eventually did that too. And even before when I was originally playing, I mean, I liked the game. Like I didn't love it. It wasn't the best I've ever played, but I really did enjoy what I played of it. So it was kind of nice just getting back into that kind of like, neopunk kind of a city and aesthetic and stuff. It's just kind of cool. I always thought, but yeah, I mean, I'm just having a bunch of fun with it. Once again, I'll probably drop it again at the end of the week coming up, as I'll talk about later.
Do you see yourself coming back to it when the DLC comes out? A number of the quality of life features are going to go back into the base game as well. Do you see yourself maybe after you put Starfield down that you might come back to this and see where that's at? Or is this just kind of tiding you over until you dive into Starfield?
No, I think I'll definitely still go back to it. I might even still play it along with it. Because like I said, I have this on Starfield I'll definitely play on my PC. But this will be up on my in my living room, on my comfy couch that I could just throw down there and just go through a quest or two. I mean, I've probably done like a third of the story maybe, and I know it's not like a super long story from what I've heard. The story just like the single player campaign, but I actually started just kind of jumping into the side quests. That's mostly what I did after doing a few of the story missions. And that was another thing. I was just trying to get acclimated with the quest menu screen, because that sometimes is an issue, or not an issue, but you can get kind of lost in there. But I was doing that, and I was just doing side quests, so I was just kind of fooling around. But yeah, I'll definitely come back to it. Like I said, I might even still play along with it so while I'm playing Starfield. But yeah, just enjoying it so far. Game Logic, any questions or comments? No? All right. If you want to jump on the mic for your PC game you've been playing this past week.
Yeah, so the past week I finally took a chance to check out Shadow Warrior 3. This popped on my radar because the definitive edition came out in February. And so kind of put a new coat of paint on the game. And it's been getting pretty decent reviews on Steam. So, like I said, it kind of came across my radar and I decided to give it a go. One of the things that I have to give this game props for is just a ton of variation in enemy types. Excuse me. And that tends to often be a weakness for games in the first-person shooter genre. That so many times enemies are just palette swaps, and they're just skins over the same template, and etc. And there's a ton of different enemy types in this game, all with different types of attacks. And I often talk about in a first-person shooter like the geometry of battle. There are a lot of levels in here that feel very Destiny 2 like, and it has that effect of you shifting the geometry of battle, and that kind of making a difference. But one of the things that is unquestionable is that just the complexity goes way up depending on the exact mixture of enemies that you have on the screen. So I found that really enjoyable in the game. This is another game that for some reason makes the design choice of not allowing you access to ADS. And it's not like Trepang 2, which I talked about a couple weeks ago, where ADS is tucked behind like a mission or a difficulty level. It's just this game just doesn't use ADS. So it was just kind of different. You do have a chi power that you use in your left hand. So but I used that kind of midway through the game, and it didn't feel like it really did a whole heck of a lot. Maybe earlier on, it kind of, it hits enemies with this kind of wind-like force and kind of stuns them and staggers them for a split second. And so that's kind of good, to kind of get people to back off of you a little bit if you're in the middle of reloading or something like that. But just overall, I didn't find it particularly useful. So this is a game that's made by another studio in Poland, Flying Wild Hog. Like our friends, People Can Fly. There must be some cross-pollination between those two studios, because there were things that caught my eye in terms of physics models and the way certain things behaved. Like I've played a lot of Painkiller, and I've been Painkiller type games in that franchise, and just like some of the crate physics and things that I saw, I was like, oh, that is Painkiller. So there's got to be people, going back and forth between those teams. That studio is currently owned by Plaion, which was formerly Koch Media, which of course is owned by Embracer. So original game published in 2022, the definitive edition, like I mentioned, released in February and published by Devolver Digital. So I don't quite understand that either. I don't understand why they're part of Bracer. They have Koch, they have Saber Interactive, they have THQ. Like, they have multiple ways to publish their own game. But, there it is. One of the other things that stood out to the game to me as well, I mentioned Big Trouble in Little China a few weeks ago too when I talked about Atomic Heart, and it feels like there's a lot of kind of Big Trouble in Little China influences in this game. I mean, it feels like you're playing through Big Trouble in Little China. Except you're playing, an Asian character instead of, Jack Thompson, or Jack Burton, sorry. So, the script and the plot again just felt very much, like Big Trouble in Little China, which is fine. It was cheesy, but it didn't give me the transgressions that Dead Island 2 and Atomic Heart did, where there's that, but then the problem that they create is then they give you whiplash because they snap you back and try and take themselves overly seriously. This game is full on cheek and cheese all the way through, and I kind of appreciate that. Like, I felt like I've seen a lot of commentary out there about, the jokes are unfunny and they're kind of sophomorish, and I'm like, Atomic Heart definitely, it's Big Trouble in Little China for a while, but then when it nosedives, it gets into like that Van Wilder territory, and it just goes on and on and on and takes it too far. And I didn't necessarily feel like this game, like there's some cheesy one-liners, but I didn't feel like all the bits are like very quick. They're either quick one-liners or they're very short, and they don't overstay their welcome like they do in Atomic Heart, where it kind of goes wrong. So yeah, I've had a good time playing it. I did finish it, rolled credits on that yesterday. Not something, there's a ton of replayability in the game with weapons unlocks and upgrades and character upgrades and things like that. I'm not personally going to take the time to go back and replay it. But that's certainly there.
And I'm kind of watching the gameplay. It seems more like kind of like Doom, like the new Doom, I should say.
There's a lot of mixed. Yes, there were absolutely some moments in the game where I was like, "Oh, Doom! This is like I've got Doom Eternal feels now." A lot of that's in the traversal. Doom, but it never gets frustrating like Doom Eternal gets. Like the thing, and we've talked through and we've been together through like the progression of some of those design elements. Right, we talked about Destiny 2 right back in the day where you were I can't remember was it Titan or kind of the ocean planet or whatever in the original campaign, where there's just a ton of platforming, and as the campaigns and as the expansion packs would come back and visit it, that platforming was there again. So there is platforming in this. It gets a little extreme sometimes. You have this, however, has like grapple and wall running and and vines you can grab onto. And things like that. So unlike Doom Eternal, where you often, you're moving at pace and you often like go out over a chasm and there's just like nothing and you're like, where am I supposed to go? Or you're over like a vat of boiling acid and you're like, where am I supposed to go? And you're literally supposed to make a right-hand turn in midair, right, to access the next jump point. While there are kind of moments like that in Shadow Warrior 3, the difference is, like I said, you have the grappling hook and you have wall running and you have multiple modes of traversal. There's very much, like I said, I mentioned there's tons of like other game feels that I have in this, and Mirror's Edge was one of them, right? There's so much of the traversal that you do where you just start getting up, where you get up and move and you're moving at a clip. And I would say for the vast majority of the game, because you guys have heard me talk through, I love traversal systems like that, but what I hate is that they are so immersion breaking when you screw up, right? But like through some really great traversal sequences, I was able to traverse some pretty wicked level designs in those spots and spaces where it was nothing but traversal without too many do-overs. So I felt like the game was, that part of the game was really well paced and the challenge level was correct, and they just didn't leave you out to hang and dry with just a Kobayashi Maru scenario in midair where you're like, where the heck am I supposed to go now?
And it's just kind of like point to point, right? You just for maybe kind of biggish area, but not like an open world or anything.
No, not at all. I mean, it's not on rails, but I mean, it's a point A to point B, shooter. And again, very much, I mean, it's very much like Destiny 2. Like, you're very much funneled in a direction, and then you hit these arenas where then combat breaks out, right? And each of those arenas is different, and it has this game. One thing I like on a lot of the levels, in terms of level design, is there's often traps. So things that you can trip to kind of take out large numbers of enemies. The game is just, the combat is super frenetic. Like I said, there's multiple types of enemies on the screen at once. It causes you a tactical challenge because you're like, I got to use this tactic to deal with these guys. I got to use this tactic to deal with these guys. There's Serious Sam vibes in this because just like Serious Sam has like the guys who are constantly howling and running at you with like, I can't remember if they have cannonball heads or they're carrying cannonballs or something like that.
They have bombs on their hands. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You have some very similar enemies. I call them the bombadillas in this game. They're like shoguns who are just running at you like on fire with explosives all over them, and they're howling. And they come at you like in mass numbers. It also kind of reminds me of DBQ. What are the enemy types in Destiny 2?
Oh, the Thrall that just...
The Thrall, yeah.
The ones that explode with the heads.
Yep. So, and again, given, how they construct the particular Lego puzzle on a given game, and put certain numbers of those enemies in different ways, it's a tactical problem. Then when you go on to those levels, right, there's grapple points, there's wall running points, there's traps. It's a game where when you're in those arena combat moments, like, I'm never standing still, right? You're constantly in motion. There's constantly a threat coming at you. You're constantly trying to, let me create space with these enemies so that I can engage these enemies. And while I'm facing in this direction, taking these guys out, I need to remember that there's this thing flying around over here out of my peripheral vision, right? And then swing back around to attack that thing. So it's kind of not surprising, but the game unfortunately didn't get a ton of love when it first came out. But with the enhancements in the definitive edition, it plays a heck of a lot better than a lot of other games that have come out this year, which is just kind of a sad state of the industry and a sad tale. So, I keep constantly saying, people should play Independence. Please don't keep your eyes solely on the AAA, big highlight Event Horizon type of, magnum opuses that are out, but also go out and play some of these indie games. And obviously Devolver Digital has a good reputation for the types of talent that it props up. So, give these things a try. And it's overall short. It's supposed to be like a 5.5 hour game. I think I clocked in at just under 8, so more like 7.5. Some of that may have been because the game was idle time while I was, setting up to live stream or Let's Play or something. But it's definitely kind of, when I wrapped it up and rolled credits, I was definitely playing through it like the Sunday afternoon that I played through Portal, right? Where I was just playing. I just felt like kept playing. I just, as the sun was going down, I was just like, I think if I could just keep pushing through, I can wrap this up. So it's definitely something doable that won't take you too far off the beaten path if you've got other, beefier games you got to get played.
Nice. DB, any other questions or comments on that?
No, I want to hear about the other beefy game you've been playing and how that's a whiplash of game types there. So
yeah, so I actually played Fire Emblem Engage earlier in the week and then shifted to Shadow Warrior 3. It was just a title that I wanted to kind of get back to that I hadn't spent a lot of time with. And much like we've talked about on this show, how games are akin to books, and we say if you read a great book when you were a kid, it's worth rereading that great book when you're an adult and seeing it through different eyes and with a different lens. The same is kind of true here in a microcosm, right, with Fire Emblem Engage, where we all, I don't care, Tao, I know Swiss and I played it. I think DBQ, you played it a little. Tao, did you have a chance to play this year?
No, I've never gotten into Fire Emblem, so.
Okay, so there are 3 of the 4 of us who are Fire Emblem people, which is a weird way to reference myself. I would have never thought that would have been appropriate like 10 years ago.
Yeah, but it's a strategy game, and it's maybe not a grand strategy game, but it's definitely in that strategy vein.
It is, but it's also heavily, very much so, a JRPG. And to the point where, in the first 3 days of the week when I was playing this, I was definitely a new strategy that I've learned that I think I'm going to try and employ, maybe even to revisit some JRPGs, is I was standing up while the dialogue was going on. I was like, that was the only way for me to stay awake. And then once the strategy kicked in, then I was able to sit down and play the game. But, and again, some of that's my OCD and just my unwillingness to a button through like all of those dialogue pieces.
See, if you were standing up and you'd like walk in place, you could get a lot of exercise out of your JRPGs that way.
Very true, very true. I should maybe put a little, one of those little desk treadmills down here in the studio. And one of the things I realized too this week, maybe because I had so much time to hyper focus on it, is part of what takes those dialogue sequences so long is these JRPGs do this thing of the gasp that yes, and they do that back and forth with multiple characters. And when you, in a span of a dialogue, right, that can sometimes take 2 minutes in a span of time. And I'm like, okay, whatever. At any rate, strategy elements on this, the thing that I appreciate about this thing more, and what I was going to say was, earlier in the year, you, Swiss, and I all kind of felt like Fire Emblem Engage was a little bit too much of a sippy cup of Fire Emblem in comparison to Three Houses. Okay, but go ahead.
I think that I remember talking about it in terms of that the narrative was much more kind of cookie cutter JRPG, but the strategy was harder, where the strategy in Three Houses is much softer, but they try to hook you with the narrative, where I feel like I had to think and strategize more in the battles than I did in Three Houses, but it didn't engage me from a character narrative level the same way.
And when I say sippy cup, my reference was more to that there wasn't as much to do off the battlefield in particular. That whole, Hogwarts kind of thing in Three Houses just lent to a lot of relationship building and a lot of meat in the game in between the battles in comparison to Engage. And one of the things that I realized on this revisit is where I was critical about that at the beginning of the year, now going into the end of the year. So critical about that in the beginning of the year, remember this game launched in January. It was really one of the first big titles of 2023. Not a lot to play, right? That was out on the field. And so you get bothered more so, I think, by a game like that, that doesn't have that much meat on the bone. Now, going into the end of the year, I'm like, okay, I don't know that I'm all that wrapped around the axle about the fact that I don't have 3 hours to while away back at Hogwarts relationship building, with a bunch of, NPCs. So I actually now appreciate that the design of that game, seeing it through different eyes and it being a little tighter from that perspective. The strategy and combat is great. I definitely kind of feel where you're coming from, DBQ. I hit the point where I realized, I was like, oh, I need to start paying attention to victory conditions, because at one point I took my main hero and, in kind of the chess piece kind of move that is Fire Emblem, I deployed them too far forward, trying to get into range to engage the other sides, because I was down to their last line of battle and I was trying to, make haste towards achieving my own victory condition. But what happened was I didn't have other characters around them blocking, enemy forces from being able to flank them. And they wound up getting dogpiled, right, by a bunch of characters. And that character themselves was their victory condition. So,
well, and the support structure here is very strong in terms of making sure that you are grouping people together, or that, there's a lot of links that happen in there that provide those boosts.
Yeah, and you've got, you have dynamics you have aerial characters who, I have an aerial character who's really a chump. She just gets beat up every battle I take her in. However, Chloe, the thing is that when I bring her into battle for at least the first, 10 turns or so, she is able to launch aerial attacks that melee characters cannot counterattack. So, she's good for that, to get some kind of licks in out on the flanks from the air. But when I had to kind of redo that last part of the fight, what I wound up doing was marshaling all of my forces up to my own line of battle and then holding there until everybody was set and then moving forward on the next turn, which, changed, how that game unfolded, how that unfolded. So it was a good playthrough. The one thing I'll say is, it's really been a great year of turn-based strategy games since, Marvel Midnight Suns came out last December. In 2023, we've had Age of Wonders 4. We have Jagged Alliance 3 that's out now. Even Baldur's Gate 3 plays a little kind of, turn-based strategy, tactical, like, once you get into...
Armored Core, is that turn-based as well?
Armored
Core is a little different.
Armored Core is not, but the other one I was going to mention, there was Advanced Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, which I've also played on Nintendo Switch. So, if you're a turn-based strategy fan, like, there's so many games. This is literally probably the best year in gaming that there's been since 2017. I have some reservations about using that label. I've been very conservative about applying that, and I'm still withholding that just a tad because we have a lot of really good games that are in the zeitgeist now that are also not very performant games in terms of frame rates and graphical fidelity. So one of the reasons I give the nod to Shadow Warrior 3, that's a game done by a small team with not a big budget that's highly performant, plays on PC at over 120 frames per second with a lot of bells and whistles turned on. But yet we can't get that out of, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is done by Respawn, headed by Vince Zampella, backed by EA. Like, this is an industry benchmarking problem, in my opinion. But my point is, there's a lot of great stuff that's out this year, and there's a lot of great, and it's not just, the action, adventure, third person, first person shooter kind of stuff. It's also here in turn-based strategy, which often, doesn't get a lot of fanfare. So yeah, Fire Emblem Engage also, good time.
Nice. All right, let's jump into my next game, which I only played a little bit so far. So Saints Row, the new Saints Row, the reboot that came out last year, I believe it was.
Last year. I was going to say new. It came out last August. So it's been a year old at this point. But it's new on Steam. So did you pick it up on Steam? Because it was an Epic exclusive.
Yeah, I picked it up on Steam. It was on sale for like $15, I believe, $14.99. So yeah, that's where I picked it up. And I was just kind of flipping through the sales a couple days ago, and I saw that. I was like, oh yeah, I'll try it out. I know there was a big, hubbub about it, and comments about this and that. But I was just like, I always like the Saints Row series, so I was like, oh, I'll give it a try. Like I said, very early on, I've only done like a couple of the story missions. Well, I did like the tutorial mission, and then a couple of the story missions once they let you out into the world. And then I was doing some side quests right before I stopped playing yesterday. But I mean, so far it's just Saints Row. I mean, like the original Saints Row back in the day, kind of, a little bit different start off, I guess. The original Saints Row, you're kind of like, an old gang. I shouldn't say old, a gang member kind of working on its way up, the ranks. And here starts off a little different. I don't want to give out any spoilers or anything, but kind of start off in a different place in the reboot. So, but pretty good character customization. Just kind of going back to the beginning here, pretty robust. I only flew around with it a little bit, and then I get sent out to the world. I'm just kind of screwing around. But like I said, excuse me, it just feels like Saints Row. So I mean, not a bad thing. I mean, like I said, I like Saints Row, so I haven't gotten to anything too wacky. I don't know how. If it gets weird, like, and even
not
more
get
wacky.
as weird as like 3 and 4. The
Yeah.
gameplay is very similar to 4 in terms of it feels like that kind of open world, third person action shooter aspect. They've done a lot over the last year. They just had their last patch was at the 1 year anniversary here in early August, where they put out a number of other quality of life pieces. So it's in a really good spot for it to launch on Steam, because it is in a much better place than it was a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw, I don't even know why, but I went to the comments for some reason, and of course, everybody's dogging it and whatever. It's like, all right, whatever, I'll stop. I don't even know why I did that, but like I said, I'm having fun with it. It plays fine. Graphically, it's I wouldn't say it's like the best looking game in the world, but I mean, it's not like old school Xbox 360 or even original Xbox One PS4 graphics or anything like that. But it's decent. I think pretty much everything up on Ultra. I think I put down a couple of things, like usually the shadow stuff I kind of put down and stuff like that, and just some other little nitpicky things like you can like they even had something I think for the foliage like the grass and stuff, so I put that all the way down. I was like, I don't really care about that, just so, but you know, my you know, so the game ran okay, so it was fine though. I mean, it's been running fine. I haven't seen any issues so far. Like I said, I'm pretty early in, so I don't have like too much to talk about, but I've been enjoying it, and you know, I'll just keep plugging away at it.
Yeah, on Steam right now it's $20. I mean, it's a, you know, it's a lot of game for $20. Where I mean, I think at $60 when it launched, it was a little more suspect. The comments were earned at that point in time, but they've fortunately, you know, this is the difficulty of the medium, and I don't know if you want to say social media around it, right? Like it's easy to write something off when it doesn't launch well, as you were just talking about Game Logic, right? Like things that launch with poor performance issues, that over time they can be a really solid game, but by that time, how much not only of the zeitgeist but also of people's they moved on to other things where it becomes stable enough. And I think that's it's a nice similar conversation with Wayfinder, where it could actually be a solid game eventually, but will it get the chance to get there is, you know, in this economy around games, is it going to get that chance?
Well, I want to maybe hold the line a bit on that. I just want to make sure I clarify for listeners, right? So I think we've used the term comments a couple times. I just want to be clear. So we're talking about Steam user reviews, you know, with regards to, because Tao, is that what you were saying? You went down and looked at on the Steam page for people who were making comments?
In their community page. I should have said reviews, actually, not comments, but.
Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to make sure, because you were talking not the community page, but you were talking about reviews. So, and in general, I've found that, look, I mean, yes, when you go down and read the verbiage in Steam reviews, some of them can be very caustic, some of them can be very pedantic, some of them can be very pretentious, some of them can be very, like, way overly, like people getting super wrapped around the axle about, like, little minutiae and physics models on racing games, right? But I will say, with Steam, like, Steam user reviews are, like, literally the only useful user reviews in terms of their aggregate number on the planet, as far as like Metacritic user reviews are absolutely useless. The user reviews that are on the individual game stores, like the PlayStation Store and the Microsoft Store, are completely useless as far as I'm concerned. Epic is doing something very interesting with the way they're doing reviews that may result in, you know, some pretty decent perspectives, just in terms of like there's apparently like a randomization algorithm that they use to actually allow people to submit reviews. Like, it's not like you could just submit a review. But the one thing that's true on Steam reviews, right, is that you have to have bought the game and own the game to actually submit a review. So you actually get a fairly good sample population. So Tal, one of the things I want to ask is, you mentioned, you know, you said, you know, you didn't know why you would go down and look at those. Whereas, like, if I buy a game on Steam, like, I doggone for absolute certainty go and look at, I look at the overall aggregate score, because I've been burnt several times trying to blow it off. And like, those scores reflect like when there's huge bugs, when there's instability, when the game's unplayable. So I'm just curious, is there a reason that like you feel like you shouldn't go to look at Steam reviews?
I mean, in general, no. I mean, I would never say like don't do it or anything like that. Me personally, I normally don't. I mean, I don't want to be swayed in either direction, because good or bad. Like, I want to just kind of figure it out for myself. Like, is this a good game or not? And I can kind of tell that just the way I what kind of games I like, and I can see that within like reviews, or not reviews, but like pre-release stuff that, you know, obviously that the game companies give out and stuff like that. So that's why I usually don't do that. I don't know. I think I was just waiting on something to update or something. So I was like, hey, I'll go and, you know, look at it for whatever reason. Yeah, just because. I mean, literally, it was just because. So that was the reason why.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, DB.
Okay, so
do we need an hour here? Because I don't.
No,
I know
I will.
You're mad in. Rants
I'll
can
give a
sometimes go
I'll
on.
give a quick hit on it, and we'll come back to it another time. We had lots of games to talk about. We got lots more news to talk about. So chances are I'll come back to it, and in true Madden fashion, it'll get patched throughout the time. I played it through the 10-hour trial. I have not played all my 10 hours. I will say that I played it before launch, and I can notice the difference after launch in terms of the day one patch that came out. The defense was better and more difficult, things that I was burning people on. It plays well on the field. The running game feels good. In all of them last year, there was big interception sliders that need to be adjusted because they were super sticky in terms of D-backs grabbing everything. It feels good on the field. It it feels good on the field, right? And after that, it's like, so this year it has done away with the face of the franchise. It's done a superstar mode. It's not the same as like the classic aughts, early teens superstar, but it's kind of a amped up face of the franchise. You can be a running back, quarterback, wide receiver, defensive, multiple defensive players. In theory, you go through some draft mini games and it affects where you get drafted. And then you get to the game and your player locked in, which is kind of fun. You in between time, going back to Fire Emblem in terms of things to do off the field, you have kind of a week by day kind of menu of things that you can do that boost some stats or boost your team. And those sound really good on paper, but they're just menus. There are mini games that you can do. The mini games are, depending on your position, they vary from for your position, but there's only a few of them for each position. So by third, fourth week in, I was kind of simulating the mini. Well, I wasn't simulating the mini games because I wanted the XP, but it really became kind of rote at that point in time. Those mini games also find their way into the franchise mode, which is probably the biggest change in the franchise mode, is that you have those mini games in addition to your weekly training. Again, sounds really good. It's a good way to earn some extra XP, but they are very small in the scope of the number of rotations in terms of the types of games that you do, which is not drastically different than like the mini game training pieces in like MLB Road to the Show or things like that, where there's, you still kind of do a small window of things. On the franchise mode side, the mini games and 6 slots for draft, so multiple players and picks can be traded for in trades. Draft picks can be traded, and the draft logic is better than last year. Tried some drafts and early on in the year or tried some picks, some trades, and they were not biting to the same degree that the Madden 23 engine did. The Ultimate Team pieces feel very much the same. A little bit of menu navigation pieces there. The store feels, at least initially, there wasn't as much that you could buy for low level real world money. That there were a lot of bigger tier packs, not a lot of earning. That's been one of the knocks against it, is more weighted to pay to play. But that's if you engage with that. All that said, I think the biggest struggle with it for me is how laggy the menus are. Playing on an Xbox Series, downloading an Xbox Series. I mean, the PlayStation 4, Xbox One doesn't really have all these same updates, so it's only Xbox Series, PlayStation 5, and PC. But the menus are, you can tell the age of the code. It's been built up over the years, and the menus are really laggy compared to the previous year. They're better. And 2 weeks in, I just played some more last night. They're better than they were pre-release. So there's been some patching. So hopefully that's something that can continue. It plays well. It's Madden. It's not as broken as it has been in the past, but it's also not drastically different. So I have as somebody who has been playing Madden 23 since its launch last year and is still in another season of it, I can notice some differences. But for a casual player, it's still football. So if you've been off for a while, it's going to feel good. If you're granular, you're going to notice some things, but it's not necessarily worth, I don't know. To me, it's not worth $70.
And you said they do have it on the last generation still, right? They released it.
Well, in true last gen fashion, that you get a roster update, but there is nothing else, right? Like this is how long did Madden sit on PlayStation 2, right? Like it continued to release, but it was basically this previous game with a roster update, and that's kind of what you're getting on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 at this point.
It's fun. Okay.
So, comments in the chat from Bulbar Country. Hi, I can go on forever about sports games. FIFA made me violate the PlayStation community service 3 times in the past 2 months alone, playing FIFA online.
Nice. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I would love to hear other people's thoughts and feedback on Madden. FIFA comes out, or Football Club comes out at the end of September here. So I'm really curious on that. I'm also curious on it because of this will be the first year that it's going to use Frostbite on Switch, where previously it was just running the old engine. It hasn't been updated since 19. Basically, just legacy updates is all that would include. So I'm very curious to see how Frostbite runs on the Switch this year.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll wait for future shows to see how your Madden plays is continuing. All right, let's jump into the news real quick. First couple news stories actually I have. First up, Charles Martinet, the voice of Mario, is actually stepping down as the voice of Mario, and I believe that's like immediate. And I was trying to look for, I could have sworn I saw an article where it actually said, and it's not in this AP News one that I have here now, but I thought it actually said that he wasn't the voice in the upcoming Mario Wonder game that's coming.
That is correct. He's not. Yes.
Did they mention who that person is?
No, they haven't announced who
right?
it was. There was some talk online, like people could notice that it sounded a little different, but yes, he's no longer he's not doing voice acting for the Mario series. So Waluigi and Wario, it's moving on to his Nintendo ambassador status.
Yeah, Mario ambassador, as he's
That's
officially known now. Yeah,
so he'll get some GBA games to go on his 3DS. So
yeah,
I believe Chris Pratt is doing the voice on the upcoming Mario game.
That's the rumor. Yeah, so he'll be the Mario ambassador going forward, traveling the world to promote the beloved plumber. It says in the article here, signing autographs and performing Nintendo character voices. So he's just doing the con circuits and stuff like that, I'm assuming. But yeah, I didn't realize he was as old as he was. He's 67 now. So excuse me. So yeah, but it's I grew up in obviously Nintendo. I mean, that's no secret, and I think he'll be missed. As far as people saying that they noticed, I don't know about that until this article came out all of a sudden, because I didn't see any mention of that before. But it's just kind of weird that all of a sudden people are like, "Oh yeah, I noticed that." Like, come on, come on, man. But yeah, it was just a quick little article I just wanted to kind of bring up. It's just like I said, grew up with Mario, and in his I think it was 1990 he started the voice as Mario. So
yeah, he did some of the Mario typings or Mario Hotel, some of the voiceover there before it got to Mario 64.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely be missed, and I don't know. We'll see. I don't really remember even in that new game. Like, I guess maybe he was making noises, but I don't even really remember him like talking. Well, he never really talks, I suppose. But he makes his whoops and woohoos and stuff. But I don't even really remember that in the new game trailers that they had showed. So, but I'm sure it can't be too hard to get a replacement for him, but he'll definitely be missed. I think maybe now I'll be able to tell if it's actually him or not. I'll have to go back and watch that trailer. But up next, unless there's any comments on this one, if there's any, no. All right. Up next, I like my law. So this is a little bit different. This is not nothing to do with Microsoft Activision or any kind of court stuff. Well, sort of court stuff, I guess. But there was a Starfield leaker who was booked on felony charges this past week for basically theft. So basically what happened is this gentleman posted video, and I think it was just like him playing, like it was just him playing on a system. I don't even remember if they said in this article from Kotaku, but it basically just phone footage of him playing Starfield, which is, okay, we've seen that before. Copies might get out there, somebody, gets one from Walmart or something, kind of happens since it did go gold a few weeks ago now. So, obviously stores are probably getting copies now, but he also later on started actually trying to sell copies of the game, and he actually recorded himself with like stacks of copies. I guess he was like in his car or in his home, like, where he's packaging them up and, about to send them out, I guess, to people who bought them. So, after a while, obviously, he got caught and now he's getting charged with, let me just go back here for a second. Felony charges of $2,500 to $10,000 worth of stolen property, misdemeanor charge of $1,000 or less of stolen property, and a misdemeanor charge of marijuana possession, which is okay. It's kind of weird. So obviously he had drugs on him too, which is kind of weird. I think he was from Tennessee. So I don't know what the laws are down there for that thing now, but it's just kind of ridiculous. Like, you're gonna go out there on social media and post these kind of pics, which, once again, like I said, leaks, yeah, that happens all the time, but actually, out there showing yourself, packaging up stuff and, obviously trying to sell this stuff. So it was just kind of a weird thing. That's, just more weird news, I guess, coming from this game that actually doesn't have anything to do with the game itself, but, just stuff around it. But I just thought it was kind of an interesting article. Any comments or questions on that one? Yeah.
I don't have any, but one comment in the chat. They also found marijuana. That's probably the reason anybody would sell a game that pings Microsoft for downloaded content at the beginning.
Nice. All right. Let's move on to Mr. Game Logic, on GamesCom for 2023.
Yeah, it's a fairly interesting dynamic. GamesCom was obviously last week. What's actually, I think, quite interesting about the kind of industry dynamic going into GamesCom, I'd made some commentary about the fact that, what really happens at GamesCom is really kind of expansion on news that's kind of out there and games that are kind of out there. There's not really necessarily any like announcements. It's like a game's already been announced. Let me put a stinger on, right, my marketing campaign out of Gamescom. And that's predominantly what happened. But the other interesting thing is that I don't know that much, a lot, in terms of numbers of things really came out of formal events at Gamescom themselves. But there were several nuggets that came out of interviews and, company interactions and things, at Gamescom that wound up hitting the news cycle. So I'm not going to cover everything that went down at Gamescom. Obviously, Starfield was shown, Forza Motorsport was shown, Stalker 2 was shown. These were all things that we kind of knew about going into the show themselves. The things that I jotted down on the list were just the things that jumped out to me that were of particular interest. You guys are welcome to add some things onto this as well. What I liked or noticed or paid attention to was Tekken 8 was dated at Gamescom, so we've known about this game. It got almost all of these got additional trailer was shown for. Right? So if you kind of think about like a movie campaign, you get the first teaser trailer and then you get the expansion trailer, and so that's what a lot of these games did. But Tekken 8 will be out in January of 2024, which will be kind of neat. We've got Mortal Kombat coming out next month, and then just a handful of months later, as we turn the corner into the new year, we'll get Tekken. So good time. And we got Street Fighter, earlier this year. So all of the a lot of the big major fighting game franchises with new games all out within 9 months of each other. A game called Expeditions was announced by Saber Interactive and Focus Entertainment. So Expeditions is I think they call this like the Spin Tire franchise, I think.
Like the Mud Runners and Snow Runners. And
yes. Yeah, so it caught my eye because obviously I like vehicle simulations, so I was out there. Speaking of another vehicle simulation, a Royal Rumble, which I don't know is it's getting short shrift, but I think it's really going to build up to a fever pitch and be a major deal, is the Crew Motorfest is coming out from Ubisoft. I think that game comes out in October?
September.
Okay.
Second week of September or so. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, one of the lists of new releases didn't have that on it then. But the Crew Motorfest got a trailer, and what I mean about this is building up to a fever pitch is that's going to put the Crew Motorfest head to head with Forza Motorsport when it comes out the following month. The Crew Motorfest, from what I've seen, is one of these games that comes out, doesn't get a lot of fanfare, you kind of ignore it, and then a year later, I go back and I check the Steam page, and this is one of these games that has like a resounding volume of reviews amongst the Steam community, which, and again, I don't bet against the Steam community, ever. So I'm now paying attention to the Crew Motorfest, waiting for it to land. Obviously, it gets a lot of kind of, I think, in my opinion, kind of slanderous comparison to just being a Forza Motorsport clone. But now it's got a free trial. If you're going to go up head to head against a big franchise that's highly anticipated, what's a way to get ahead of that? You offer a free trial to your game and you let people come in and try it out. And you don't have to be, goofy subscription Umpty Scrunch member to get access to the free trial. It's just going to be a free trial. So I think that's going to be a pretty big deal. That people will be able to get in there and access it and try it out, before Forza Motorsport comes out.
Yeah, I don't think you were on the show when I tried the beta. I got into one of the betas and played it. It controls a whole lot better than Crew 2. And like you said, the Crew 2 got, had years of support and kind of really built a rolling following. So hopefully this is a good sign for Ubisoft and that team, because it's as derivative as it may feel around the Horizon series, it plays really well and looks great. So
and you make a really good point, right? The thing I should have mentioned is not only do you go back and find out that the Steam reviews have gone up and up, but just what you mentioned, right? From the Ubisoft showcase, which caused me to pull the thread on a lot of this stuff, you go back and like these games in these Ubisoft, portfolios, the For Honors, the Crew Motorsports, what was the one that you played? Tau, the Ride Downhill, Riders Republic thing.
Republic, yep.
Like all those games get DLC and like tons of support from Ubisoft. Way more than other games that are, again, from bigger companies with bigger budgets. It's really impressive. And you talk about,
Riders
a living game.
Still been getting stuff even now. I think they've added like skateboarding now and all kinds of other extreme sports into there.
Yeah, so I'm an Ubisoft fan. I can go on and on about them. Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Realms of Ruin, got a trailer and was dated, and now I am forgetting what the date was. But this is another Warhammer-based RTS, which obviously, I love. So
November 17th.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that'll be in the hole right between Veterans Day in America, between Veterans Day and Thanksgiving. So it's a good pickup for people who are RTS fans on their way home for the holidays. Another one that is one of my most highly anticipated games is Homeworld 3. Will be making its triumphant return to the landscape in next year. I think that's a January or February 2024 release. And again, a lot of what happens at GamesCom is, hey, I haven't heard about Game Umpty Scrunch for a while. So the company goes, let me put out a revised trailer just to make sure that, people have confidence that they know the game's still on track, the game's still coming out. Its release date was confirmed. Looking super forward to Homeworld 3. I saw another article this week about some of the co-op modes, and apparently there's like a horde kind of co-op mode for Homeworld 3 this time around. So you warp from sector to sector, kind of going back and forth between like a straight up horde mode of waves of enemies and then objective based ones that allow you to do upgrades for your capital ships, and then you warp off to the next sector and you just keep doing that, with your co-op partners, as long as you can keep going and getting through more waves and more waves. And then somebody.
I threw this one out. I was going to see if you were going to read it or not. Be like, wait, I didn't put that there. Yes, thank goodness you're here. Is a game that was announced out of kind of left field. It's by Cole Supper, a small little indie studio out of the UK. It has this kind of looks somewhere between like the Goose Game and WarioWare, but in like a Cartoon Network type of style with a lot of humor in it, kind of quirky UK humor. So it might not be everybody's gig, but again, that kind of breadth and scope of, as you were talking about game logic, right? Not always big AAA games, but kind of the creative spectrum that indie games can encompass. So that's why I threw it on here. It was kind of surprised in the in the opening night of all kinds of big, heavy action games and dark, kind of serious games to get this kind of quirky, cartoony game.
Yeah, and just one more thing to add. I didn't put it on here. Just real quick. The Bulletstorm VR. They gave a date for that, which is December 14th. I never played the original Bulletstorm. I think I played like a demo maybe when it came out in 360. But this looks pretty fun.
Is it coming to all VR platforms or just like Quest, or is it
I think it was everything. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a PSVR 2 title, isn't it?
I've seen it on the PlayStation Store. Yeah, it's definitely a PSVR 2 title.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to go on to the next news story to keep us moving. So, as I mentioned, a lot of the side commentary that came out of GamesCom was also some of the big news. And one of those meetings that happened was Baldur's Gate 3 will launch on Xbox this year after Larian and Phil Spencer found a solution. Now, the current kerfuffle going on out in fan commentary is, what does found a solution mean? Does that mean that clearly we didn't find a technical solution, we didn't fix a problem? So what was the problem that a solution had to be found for? Some people think that the problem was Larian Studios misinterpreting this notion of a parity clause about features and modes that have to be the same on Xbox Series S versus an Xbox Series X version. I don't know that that's the case. Found a solution, some people think means Phil came and said, hey, look, in this instance, you guys can go ahead and publish the game without having feature parity between the two console deployments. There's a follow-on comment that I really think people are really getting wrong. I'm assuming because they don't work in the software development, software engineering field. And, Xbox put out the statement that, they are continuing to explore getting split screen co-op working on the Xbox Series S with Larian. Some people are taking that like a fishing line and running it 100 miles out to sea and saying, hey, split screen is still coming to the Xbox Series S. Let me help you make sure that you are clear from somebody who works in software development, software engineering. When I tell a customer that I will continue exploring whether or not I can get a feature working, that does not mean that it is coming. In fact, I personally always follow up because I'm very huge about openness and transparency and being very direct. I always say, we'll continue exploring getting that to work, but I cannot promise you that that will be delivered, right? The fact that Xbox is not saying it, you should understand that that is an unspoken thing that is inherently true. They are not promising to deliver split screen co-op on the Xbox Series S. This is an upside downside for me. My feeling is I think it was absolutely a great thing for Xbox leadership to go to Larian. We saw this during the Xbox 360 era when Xbox Live Arcade games had a size cap. And then I can't remember what game it was that came along that basically said, forced Xbox to say, we need this game on our platform in Xbox Live Arcade, and they lifted the cap. And so, this is a thing that I think is very good for them to do. However, the business lesson learned from this and the business question it raises and the business thing we need to look at is everybody who runs a continuing business model around software products encounters this thing. Out of the Epic Apple lawsuit, it got dropped that Apple doesn't charge everybody a 30% cut. And what that led to was lots of people said, hey, hold on a second, right? Why are they only having to pay 15%? Spotify got very agitated about the fact that other people weren't being asked to pay 30%, particularly when Apple competes directly with Spotify through its Apple Music offering. So when those cats come out of the bag, right, somebody's going to come along and say, hey, why is that guy getting to deploy without feature parity, but I'm not? We also saw this when we had the whole crossplay kerfuffle with PlayStation. Multiple developers were asking, hey, why is that guy able to do crossplay and I'm not? And part of the problem was that the account executives weren't being consistent with the developers that they were partners for, right, in deploying their games on PlayStation. So people are going to start asking this question, and what many businesses will do is they will say, hey, the volume of questions that's coming in is too high. we need to make this policy. We need to come to some blanket statement that levels the playing field and makes it equivalent and fair for everyone. The longer you stay in this thing of doing this onesie twosie, like picky choosy kind of thing, it becomes disruptive. People aren't happy. So Xbox is going to have to deal with that and figure it out. And it's going to be, just interesting to see, what approach they make. DBQ, your opinions on that?
No, I think I'm nodding along, right? Because I think about all the, oops, we turned on crossplay accidentally. Look how easy it is to make it work, right? Like, yeah, I think it will be interesting to see what it does really, and how much of this is Larian pulling its weight because of the kind of cultural cache of Baldur's Gate, or it, like you said, if it opens up those floodgates of Microsoft through some other, through Phil's interviews at Gamescom, definitely are not shying away from or pulling away from Series S and continue to commit to it, especially with the new SKU with the 1 terabyte model coming out. So if that does create kind of this slippery slope of future feature parity, and to what degree maybe there are tiers that end up in that. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next 2 years or so.
Nice. Game Logic, you got one more story, I believe.
Yep, and I'll try and get through this pretty quickly. Yet another battle royale being set up for this fall will be the impending battle between NVIDIA's DLSS 3.5 and AMD's FSR 3, which should also be out this fall. So this article over on videocards.com, NVIDIA announces DLSS 3.5 with ray reconstruction launches this fall. The article reads, while there haven't been any updates regarding AMD FSR 3, and that's official updates, it's rumored to be coming out this fall, fairly corroborated rumors. There was a suspicion that it was going to launch concurrently with Starfield. I personally don't think that that's true. That volume of that corroboration has been dropping the closer we've been getting to Starfield launch, so I think it's going to be later this fall. While there haven't been any updates regarding AMD FSR 3 and XeSS going open source, NVIDIA is determined to make headlines with the latest iteration of DLSS, deep learning super sampling. This AI-driven algorithm has undergone 4 significant releases to date: DLSS 1, DLSS 2.3, 3, and 3.1. The most recent update appears to be focused on improving ray tracing. So the short story of this is that they are taking ray tracing and basically, I think what they're doing is basically increasing the sample rate by which they will put in what a lot of people refer to as artificial frames or artificial reflections or additional temporal effects to enhance the overall impact of ray tracing. Ray tracing often, for some people, has this thing of, if it's overdone, then they feel like it doesn't really add anything to the experience, and they wind up turning it off. So they're I guess putting in additional denoisers. They've already done that on one iteration before. Like I said, the thing that's going to be set up with this is AMD's FSR 3 is supposed to be coming out probably this fall. It's so. The battle, I mean, this is the battle between the two cards, right? AMD has taken the approach that they're going to put additional VRAM on the cards. NVIDIA, however, in general, is typically better at ray tracing than AMD is. AMD is typically better at raster. But now the battle often comes down to the differentiation between the two cards being these super sampling techniques. And it right now, to me, from what I've seen, it varies from game to game. DLSS, by the way, will come out this fall, and it will arrive with the Cyberpunk 2077 expansion pack, Phantom Liberty, and then it will also be in Alan Wake 2. So, and I think DLSS 3.5 is coming out this November. I lost that somewhere buried here in the article, but I think that's the plan. Well, Cyberpunk, the expansion pack comes out for Cyberpunk, in September also?
Is it September or October? But yes.
Maybe October.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, it'll obviously roll out to other titles. So it'll be interesting. Borber Country asks, any thoughts on FSR 3? I don't have any specific thoughts. I mean, in my mind, PC gamers are, I don't want to say that they're weird. PC gamers have, as any consumer is on kind of a higher end of a market. Lots of them have very pretentious and pedantic positions on these things, right? And a lot of people feel like this, I shouldn't have to use a super sampling technique to get the frame rates out of a card that I paid $500 to $1,500 for. And I get that. I have just gone to the point where, look, every time I get a card, a card in a new game, I'm going to turn on, right, FSR or DLSS. There was a time where I was like, I wasn't going to bother with those because I too felt like, well, I shouldn't have to turn them on. I shouldn't be forced or compelled. But I am now because I want those frames. And I'm not as image fidelity sensitive as some people are, particularly in a fast moving game where I'm not sitting there like observing every little micro detail right on the screen. So, my hope is right now, as far as FSR 3 goes, it just comes down to, which card do you go after to get you better frames if you are a frame sensitive person. Some people are more image fidelity sensitive. FSR 3, will hopefully put AMD at parity with NVIDIA with regards to when ray tracing is enabled, just being able to keep up with the frames. So, that's the good for them. I mean, it's what's a good lift for AMD is, when you're putting cards out that are cheaper than NVIDIA cards and making those, I won't call them a budget option, but a more cost-effective option, than making them equally effective or in some cases better by rolling out, software updates, it's a force multiplier. And in that commentary, I will leave out the matter of managing AMD Adrenalin drivers, which is a software thing that may not be such a good deal for people using AMD cards.
All right. Let's jump out of the news and jump into our round robin real quick here. DB, real quick, anything new on Destiny 2? So they announced the last...
Yeah, right. That this was around Gamescom. They announced they had a Destiny 2 showcase, which gave a little bit more on the final shape, the February DLC that's coming to kind of close out some of the story. And they announced what their plan was afterward in terms of episodes, 3-act episodes that could be purchased at any point, and would be kind of standalone. And that same day they launched this current Season of the Witch. And so gave me a kind of a reason to jump back in and play it. I played some of the seasonal content because it kind of pushes you into that right away. It's fun. It's, it's Destiny 2. It's still fun. Like, I was a little under leveled and died a whole lot. So did everybody else that I was playing with. So, it was, I knew that I was playing with people that had not gone through the event either, because all three of us were running around trying to navigate and figure out where we were supposed to go, but we made our way through. But again, the gameplay is still good. Like, it's Destiny 2. If you've liked it before, it's always easy to jump back in, and it feels very comfortable, even if you may not, I think, even if you may not know where things are at story-wise or within all the systems on systems and things like that. But one of the things they really hammered on with the showcase was the final shape, the DLC in February. They're designing it to be for anybody who's played Destiny 2 at any point in time to be able to jump in and kind of catch up on where they're at. So they're doing something in a couple of weeks with this current season where they're pulling some story missions back from the vault. So to kind of give kind of highlights, narrative, kind of crib notes of the story over the course of time. So kind of putting those in rotation before they head into February with the final DLC. So yeah, they gave me enough to get back in for the first time in probably 6 months since Lightfall, and kind of pushed me away. So yeah.
Nice. Real quick, Game Logic, Phantom Liberty comes out September 26th. You're talking about before. So, and if you want to go ahead and tell us about your Diablo 4 gaming.
Yeah, not too much on Diablo 4. So two other comments that I want to make just on loopbacks, though, is number one, in the Gamescom rundown, one thing that I forgot to mention that should bear mentioning is, again, we've talked about how packed this year is with games. The other side note that came out of Gamescom is people were still announcing games that are dropping in October. Like, it's amazing. It's like games falling off of trees. So, it's just an incredible time. DBQ, I wanted to ask you, are you playing a new character in Destiny 2 or just...
Played my same character. Yep. I mean, at some point or another, I've spun up all 3 classes, but mainly I'm playing my same character. I was only at just under 1700 in terms of a light level, and the new content was like at 1709. So it didn't take me long to get there. By the end of the event, I was at level of where I was supposed to be to start running it more frequently. So no, not a new character. Just kind of jumping back in from where I've been.
Yeah, I've been playing Diablo IV on the PlayStation 5. I've actually been playing almost a lot of stuff on PC. Like I said, I took that one segue onto the Nintendo Switch, but haven't really had my PlayStation 5 or my Xbox on recently, so finally fired it up after a couple weeks, and it's same. It takes so long to get settled back into playing that game with a controller. I still don't really particularly like the control mappings. It's this weird, like, there's a thing on X and then a thing on L2, and then L1 is it's the health thing, so sometimes I screw up and wind up hitting the L1 key, but I'm like, oh no, that's not an attack type, that's tied to the other button. So it would have been really nice to get, keyboard and mouse support, enabled on the consoles, but, here we are. So game, having a good time with it. I kind of got distracted by a side mission that I just couldn't complete. I was looking for some traveler's shrine out somewhere, and it said, go there and make an offering. And I found the shrine, but I'm like, how do you make an offering? That's not clear. So in classic Diablo fashion, I just kind of searched around trying to find how to trigger this event, and wound up just stumbling upon a couple, 2 or 3 different dungeons. So I just spent my afternoon plundering through dungeons instead, which just makes it a Diablo game. So having a good time with it. Haven't completed the campaign, so haven't spooled up anything about like a seasonal character or anything like that. But this is the kind of game DBQ with Madden that I'll be picking at for forever and a day. So it's a good way to while away the time.
What was the class you're playing again?
So on PlayStation, I am playing a Necromancer, and then on PC, I'm playing a Barbarian. So I was playing my Necromancer today.
All right, and to finish out, I'm playing Dragon's Dogma again, Dark Arisen. I kind of fell off of it. Like, I was playing it again early in the week, like Monday and Tuesday, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because it's an older game, but I couldn't get into it any more than I had already had. Like, I had gotten past obviously the tutorial, and I had been going through a little bit of the story missions and requests. And I don't know, it's something just off, or maybe I'm just like not in that mindset to play kind of like a fantasy game right now. I think that's why I kind of jumped, and maybe why I kind of liked Cyberpunk a little bit more when I started playing that again. And even Saints Row is kind of modern day, obviously. So I don't know, but I'll go back to it and try to get back into it at some point. But yeah, I was just kind of tolling around, doing missions and stuff, and I was just like, okay, like I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I just that's when I jumped into the Cyberpunk. So I think we kind of all get there sometimes where we just want to play a game, but that was my experience for now. Like I said, I'll go back into it eventually. All right. Anything else that we've been playing this past week? Nothing. All right. Let's jump into what we're playing the upcoming week. Game Light or DB, you got anything you're looking forward to other than Madden? More Madden?
This week, Sea of Stars comes out. The Messenger developers, the kind of Chrono Trigger inspired, coming out day one on Game Pass, along everything else as well.
Nice. Game Logic? Like you're going to play a little bit more Atomic Heart?
Maybe. We'll see. I don't really know. That's a game that for my up next, I would be going back to that game tonight after the podcast, and just binge another episode of Game of Thrones. So I may go back to Atomic Heart, but then I was thinking maybe Atomic Heart, but maybe I should try out Bolt Gun, which is a game that I've also had been taking a look at on PC.
That's the Warhammer.
That is the Warhammer
one, right? Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. But I don't know. Just in the last few minutes, as we've been talking through games, I've been like, I'm not certain about either of those choices. So I will say that I'm undecided at this point.
Nice. And for myself, I'll be getting Starfield on. I guess actually it comes out Thursday. I think for us. I think you can get into it from what I was reading, which is kind of weird.
I
But
think you can get into it on Friday. So there's some weirdisms going on with all the pre-orders and collector's editions and stuff. And Amazon is now telling me Amazon updated my delivery date. They've updated it twice now. First, it was updated to September. It was updated to shipping on August 31st, delivering on September 1st, which was like a big update. That was the starter pistol that told me, okay, Amazon and Microsoft have talked. Microsoft have told them this is good. It's going. Go ahead and let everybody know. And so that was my first kind of big confidence uplift. But more recently, now they've said it's shipping on August 31st, and I'll receive it on August 31st. So an even better deal, which means, I'll have my code, and then my code will go active on September 1st. So still won't be able to access the game until September 1. But I think there are physical versions that are shipping out on August 31st.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually went up, and I forgot about this until you mentioned it last week. I went ahead and did the upgrade to the premium edition, so I'll be able to get it a few days early now, or like 5 days early, I think is the early access. And then also, there's another game, WrestleQuest, which I just recently found out that if you have Comcast Xfinity, you can actually go through the rewards section, and you get a download code for that for Steam. So I just did that tonight, actually. Found that out. So I'm going to be doing that. I'll be playing that at least early in the week, obviously. So and that's it. So that is all for episode number 305. Gentlemen, any last words on anything before we head out? No? Thank you, Borbor Country, for stopping by. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for watching, whether live or in the VOD in the next coming weeks or week or a few days. Thank you, DB. Thank you, Game Logic. Please play those games. Take care of yourselves out there, and we will see you next time.